I'm available if you have questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Holmes. Now we go to cannabis culture for 10 minutes. I believe, Marc Emery, you're going to open for 5 minutes and then share 5 minutes. Okay.
I look forward to the 5, Mr. Chair. And thank you for inviting us. We are from Cannabis Culture, which is an activist organization since 1994 that's been dedicated to overgrowing this government, which in our language is to legalize this government. I said overgrow, not the throw. And it's important, all due respect that this is the Health Committee, but you know, marijuana is one of the safest substances on earth. And I walk down Spark Street and it's safer than every product they're selling there. It's safer than candy, it's safer than eating at McDonald's, it's safer than prescription drugs, tobacco, alcohol, all of which is commonly available on this street. It's safer than cheerleading in high school, it's safer than football in high school, it's safer than hockey in high school. You could rarely make a more safe choice than choosing to use cannabis for whatever reason. And that's why I think it's wholly unworthy of a parliament to spend a whole week discussing the health concerns of a substance that has not killed anybody while being supplied by the free market, some call it the black market, for the last 50 years. Imagine, can you conceptualize any other product that hasn't killed anyone in 50 years? Cars kill people all the time, alcohol, tobacco, prescription drugs, foods kill people, obesity kills people. Everything you do in the society out there, exercising your own bodily autonomy, guaranteed to us by the Supreme Court in the Morgenthaler case, to control our own bodies, there are few things you could take that are not more harmful than cannabis. In fact, even government-approved water in Walkerton, Ontario has killed 8 people. So water is more dangerous than marijuana, realistically. This should be at the Justice Committee. And the reason is I've been in 36 prisons and jails for pot. I was exiled by my own government for 5 years to the United States for selling seeds by mail. Can you imagine? This country was founded on agriculture and farming, and yet I spent 5 years in jail, co-authorized by my own government, because I sent seeds to willing adults to plant plants. We've come to this. The Justice Committee should be looking at this because 2,400,000 Canadians have been criminalized with charges of cannabis offenses since 1965. There is nothing else in this country remotely close to 2.4 million people getting charged for doing something they love, which is growing or selling or consuming marijuana, and harming no one else. If we've got organized crime in there, it's because you created it. Had you not criminalized marijuana, nobody would be handling marijuana except organized, regular retailers in our usual business regime. So you're the problem. You're at fault. We've had prohibition for 93 years. I've never seen Parliament modernize it or ameliorate the terrible things in any of that time. I spent 3 months in Saskatoon Correctional for passing 1 joint. I was sent to the United States for 5 years for sending seeds to Americans. And we have done every manner of disobedience. Like I say, I've been arrested probably at least 27 or 8 times, and I've been jailed 36 times. I've been jailed in 9 out of 10 provinces for my activism. I've seen prisons in this country. And we need to get rid of this criminalization. And the legalization that everybody really wanted when we thought we were electing Mr. Trudeau and his platform was simply the way it was brought in. In 1923, the Justice Minister got up in the Parliament and said, "Mr. Speaker, we've added a new drug to the schedule." And that was it. No other discussion, nothing else. So you can legalize it in the exact same way. Mr. Speaker, we've removed cannabis from the schedule. That's the only legalization that's really permissible. It's the only one that's really legalization. Everything else is a recriminalization. In fact, I dare say there are more criminal offenses in the new Cannabis Act than there currently are in the existing legislation. So you're actually broadening it to include more people with more offenses, and virtually everybody who needs to be legalized, all the growers in this country, all the sellers, and all the consumers, they will still be criminalized under this Cannabis Act. Only licensed producers, a very small minority, are going to be allowed to grow marijuana. You can't possess marijuana that doesn't even come from a licensed producer or some Ontario government monopoly or Quebec government monopoly or New Brunswick government monopoly as they're going. So now, before at least we were only criminalized. Now we're going to be criminalized and exploited by our own governments. We're going to be used as a cash cow, having our own culture usurped from us and handed over to a bunch of bureaucrats and politicians who probably never smoked pot in their life, don't understand anything about these people, don't understand anything about us, and it's a total insult to about 5 million Canadians who adore this plant, love this this plant, use this plant, consume it, sell it, grow it, and have been involved their whole lives like I have in this plant. And to listen to this kind of discussion, the government that's oppressed us is going to come and be our liberators and hand us and dole us out like we're children. Children, we're being condescended to in the worst possible way. We're adults. We make choices. If you're concerned about children, great, deal with that. But for most of the country who smokes marijuana, they're 18 years to 80 years old. Thank you, Mr. Casey. That's 5 minutes. I'll let my wife continue. She's going to tell you how great marijuana is.
I'd like to thank you for inviting me to speak here. And I represent, I believe, the victims of prohibition while I'm here. We've heard from a lot of experts and bureaucrats and a lot of people who have a lot to say. And it's fantastic that we're having this discussion. The idea that we're sitting here today talking about legalization in this country, it means a lot to me personally. I campaigned for the Liberals as a nomination candidate because I believed in legalization. Because not only am I currently a victim of prohibition myself, out on bail before you here after being arrested 6 months ago, but prior to that I was a drug war widow. I spent years with my husband taken away from me and imprisoned in a foreign country he had never been to, with the Drug Enforcement Administration saying very clearly it was because of his legalization activism and because he gave millions of dollars to legalization reform groups around the world. That's the DEA's own chief, Karen Tandy, and it's a press release you can easily see. So he says it was for seeds, but the U.S. government says it was for legalization activism. We're here to talk about legalizing cannabis, which means we should not have any law enforcement concerns. If it's going to be legal, law enforcement should be able to focus on actual crimes with real victims like rape, assault, murder, theft. I have law enforcement family members. My aunt and uncle are in Alberta with the RCMP and work with MAD. My sister is also with the Vancouver Police Department. I care about law enforcement. I care about the laws. I care about this country and our citizens. But our country and these laws and our citizens are harmed by this prohibition and by any criminalization of cannabis. Even if cannabis was dangerous, even if it killed people every day and contributed to rape and assault and murder of our young adults all across this country like alcohol does, it shouldn't be illegal. We should have the free choice to consume or grow or share a plant that isn't just benign or neutral. As you've heard, it actually helps people. It actually saves lives. And I know we only have a few minutes here, but I want to try and cite, if you'll read my brief, I submitted 10 pages, reduced to 5. But let's look at the actual health impact of cannabis. The American Journal of Medicine in 2013 and the Journal of Health Economics in 2017 said cannabis use reduces obesity. It results in healthier, thinner consumers. The Journal of the American Medical Association in 2015 said cannabis is medicine. The Journal of the American Medical Association in 2012 said a 20-year study found no damage to lungs from cannabis. This is backed up by Dr. Donald Tashkin, whom the U.S. government asked to prove it causes lung cancer. They found it actually prevents it. You can go to cancer.gov. The U.S. government says that cannabis and cannabinoids attack and kill cancer cells. They shrink brain cancer cells. That's the Journal of Molecular Cancer Therapies of 2014. You've got the American Journal of Public Health in 2014 saying that cannabis access reduces suicide rates. My father took his life when I was 9. This gold necklace here was his. I was on antidepressants for many years, and they caused me harm. And we heard just yesterday that antidepressants increase suicide rates by 33%. That's why I got off of antidepressants, and I use cannabis instead. I use legal cannabis because I'm out on bail, so I'm not allowed to go to a dispensary, but I'm going to just show you here. This is a marijuana joint. This is what we're here to talk about. This is cannabis, and it's not hurting anybody. But I've been inside the U.S. prison system, and I'll tell you, I didn't cry for myself or my husband as victims of prohibition. I cried for the children and the mothers and the families who were there visiting their loved ones, the little babies who saw their daddy on the other side of the visiting room. And they said, why is my daddy here? He didn't hurt anybody. They say prisoners are bad, but my dad, he's not bad, is he? And the moms are trying not to cry, and these little kids are saying, Mom, please don't cry, please be brave. These are the victims of cannabis prohibition. Cannabis prohibition has far more victims and far more devastation than cannabis ever could. And right now we do have a drug crisis in this country. It's the opioid crisis. None of you here have not heard of it. And you have the United States National Institute on Drug Abuse. saying that cannabis dispensaries reduce opioid deaths. You've got so much evidence showing that even the Harvard study of Frontiers in Pharmacology says it improves cognitive functioning. The American Psychological Association in 2015 said teens, even chronic users, do not have later issues. The British Journal, they find cannabis is the safest substance. So I get emotional here because I followed the law. Every year my husband was incarcerated, I had to cross that U.S. border, knowing they could ask me if I used pot and I could be denied the ability to see my husband. And I managed to get through because I followed the rules as closely as I could. And then we decided to engage in peaceful civil disobedience, just like Dr. Henry Morgentaler, who received the Order of Canada for breaking the law to provide a much-needed service. Civil disobedience is the only way we've managed to change these laws in this country with respect to cannabis.
I really appreciate your passion and your commitment to this, and you're going to have lots of chance to answer questions and provide information. But I have to move along to the other speakers.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time.
But we appreciate your contribution. Okay, now we're going to go to the